You are now watching The Meech.
So apparently, a Nintendo Direct is coming soon. We are recording this discussion on Sunday, September 10th, so for all we know, when we wake up in the morning, not only will we feel like a piece of crap, but also a Nintendo Direct could be announced. Wow. You know, I gotta say, this time is one of the rare times where I'm actually not craving a Direct. I feel like the June Direct was great, and with the Super Mario Bros. Wonder Direct, I feel like anything beyond that is kind of a bonus. I'm not sure if you feel the same way, but usually when it's Direct season, man, we are very hungry for a Nintendo Direct.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. This is like the first Direct season I'm not really craving for anything. Just like new information on games that are coming out this year, but besides that, I mean, I've already got my Game of the Year coming out in October, so I mean, I don't really need anything else. But there is a few prevalent rumors that we're talking about today, isn't there?
Oh boy. So the thing is, Nintendo's 2023 has been a very interesting year. Have you noticed a lack of rants and Demetrius Fury segments? Well, the problem is, Nintendo has done too much good. Their remakes earlier this year, being Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe and Metroid Prime Remastered, were great. And Jeff Grubb was right! He was right! That was what I got out of that February Direct. I remember calling you after it happened and I just said, he was right! And you're like, where were the new game announcements?
I mean, I think we were both right in there.
Well, the thing
What were
is,
the new game announcements?
yeah, there were announcements of remakes and such, but that all changed in June, and everything has been pretty great. I did have some concerns with Tears of the Kingdom, but as it turns out, it turned out to be an excellent sequel. Pikmin 4 is just incredible, easily in my top 5 favorite Nintendo games, and Super Mario Bros. Wonder is looking phenomenal. But now we get into the Kong in the room. So we did a live stream predictions thing for this Nintendo Direct with you guys, and Pioro, who is a prominent leaker, who is actually a leaker because his track record is flawless, he teased out a new F-Zero and a new Donkey Kong. But it turns out there was the ultimate Donkey Kong's paw. We're not getting Donkey Kong Jr. Math 2. I know it's sad. Instead, we're apparently getting a new Mario vs. Donkey Kong game. And that F-Zero game is not what we expected. And I have a lot to say about that one. But also a lot to say about Mario vs. Donkey Kong coming back.
Yeah, so Puro, I think, was doing this to catch fake leakers, and I understand that. However, you're still messing with the emotions with a lot of Donkey Kong fans that have been starved for content for almost a decade, right? F-Zero more so. I don't know if this was the wisest thing to do, because now discussions around those games are supremely negative. I don't know.
I think they would have been either way.
It would have been, but I feel like it would have been less so if he had just come out and just said, it's Mario versus Donkey Kong. But I understand the mindset behind it, but man, I was really excited at the prospect of a new Donkey Kong. And you know what's funny? During the live stream, I even kind of said, what if this is some Mario versus Donkey Kong game? Because, that's the scene where Donkey Kong's fighting Mario, and we just kind of shoved it off. This is one of the times I wish I wasn't right.
He was wrong. I wish, but here's the thing with that. Yeah, he said that, I did this to catch the fake leakers, but he knew exactly what he was doing. Don't play stupid. He's going out there saying that, I just did it to catch the fake leakers, but no, he knew what he was doing. He's trying to get some additional clout. Clout chaser! Ha ha! No, everyone liked you.
Move.
Everyone liked you before. There's no need to do something like that. I'm not furious about it or anything, but I do think, yeah, he should have known the reaction towards it. And like I said, I don't cover leakers and rumors, except when there's actual valid sources like this guy who pretty much has gotten everything right. He got the Mario Direct right. He got Super Mario Bros. Wonder right. He got Super Mario RPG Remake right. But let's talk about the idea of a new Mario vs. Donkey Kong, because if we're thinking about it from the prospect of that being the new Donkey Kong game after nearly a decade, yeah, it's gonna sting. But the thing is, Mario vs. Donkey Kong is not really related to the Donkey Kong series. It's more of a sort of small Mario spin-off, but there are just so many problems I have with the idea of a new Mario vs. Donkey Kong. The thing is, Mario vs. Donkey Kong on the Game Boy Advance is the only game in the series to have the gameplay style of Donkey Kong 94, because with the sequel being Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2 March of the Minis, that's what introduced the Minis gameplay, which is essentially similar to Lemmings, where you guide the Mini Mario toys to the goal by using the stylus. And you know what, for a sequel, yeah, I think it's an interesting concept, and it's kinda cool, and it made sense on the DS. Then we got Mario vs. Donkey Kong, Minis March Again, which is an abridged version of the sequel on DS for DSiWare. It's pretty much the same game, but it introduced the concept of the minis being automated. Then we got Mario vs. Donkey Kong, Miniland Mayhem. I will say that's probably the best in the Minis series. I really enjoyed that game. And if they just left it at the DS games, I think it would have been fine. And they actually did do something cool afterwards. There was a Mario and Donkey Kong game, not versus, and, where it's a 3D perspective. That one was really cool. But then we have Mario vs. Donkey Kong Tipping Stars. Where did I even begin? I'll let you begin because you were enthusiastically telling me about the intro to the game.
It's a bunch of PNGs of Donkey Kong kidnapping Pauline in the Mushroom Kingdom for some reason, and Mario saying, "Hey, come back here," and then that's it. That's literally the story. It's just a couple of PNGs slapped on a background. Wonderful storytelling there, Nintendo.
New Super Mario Bros. 2 looks like a novel now.
Oh yeah, but I guess I'll start with my sort of history with the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series. My first introduction to it was, I believe, Minis March Again on my brother's DSi, but my cousin, she actually had, I think, Miniland Mayhem, and she had Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2. So I'm very familiar with the gameplay, and even when I was a kid, I thought it was kind of boring. Like, I don't know. It's fun when you're solving puzzles to an extent, but I feel like prolonged amounts of time for it, at least for me, don't really do the gameplay justice. I feel like that type of gameplay is best suited in like little spurts. I always thought it was kind of like, it should have been like kind of a bonus mode to like a meatier title. But with that said, the original Mario vs. Donkey Kong, like you said, is a phenomenal puzzle platformer, and it really improves on the mechanics of the original Donkey Kong 94, and I wish that was, what they did going forward with the franchise. Maybe even incorporating Donkey Kong into the gameplay somehow. But alas, here we are. Now there is a little caveat here that I think we should talk about. All of the Minis games, well, the Minis are in every game, but the Minis-centric gameplay, they're all touchscreen based. This will probably be the first time where the games aren't touchscreen based. And with that said, I know Mario Maker 2 did it because, well, it's a sequel to Mario Maker, and how else are you going to make Mario levels? But this is a game supposedly built from the ground up for the Switch. Now, wanted to ask you, since the Minis gameplay does thrive a lot on touchscreen stuff, and the Switch has a touchscreen, but it's not like the DS touchscreen. Do you think they'll stray away from the Minis gameplay and go back to the more well-loved Mario vs. Donkey Kong 1 gameplay? Or do you think that
if they go for that, that's honestly one of my most wanted Nintendo games. Yes, Mario vs. Donkey Kong is definitely a smaller series, but I've always wanted a successor to the first game. And hey, if the minis are playable, but they play like Mario and Mario vs. Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong 94, That could be really cool. The only
That could
thing
be cool.
that I'd be against is just having another game in the style of the minis gameplay. Because like I said before, there were so many games with that style, and like I said at the time it made sense, but there are just so many of them, I don't understand why we would need another one. Another thing about it, the last one, I will admit I'm always advocating for Nintendo to bring back series I haven't touched on in a while. The last one was Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge, which was a game that fully utilized amiibo characters, where you'd scan in an amiibo and get levels based on them. That was a cool concept, pretty much the closest thing we could ever get to Nintendo Skylanders or Disney Infinity, but the gameplay is just the same tired, repetitive Mario vs. Donkey Kong gameplay. Now that one is more interesting since the characters have different abilities and there are themes around them for the levels, but after so many games, it just gets stale.
I just can't see like the minis gameplay working on a big screen TV. Like, I guess they translated Mario Maker's gameplay, quote unquote, well, but at the same time, you lost that intuitive touch with it. Now that's a sequel. This is a new Mario versus Donkey Kong, and they do change things up once in a while. Like the 3DS one, they changed up quite a bit, but that was still touchscreen based. I don't think they're gonna do like a handheld only game. So, do you think they'll do gyro controls if they go back to the minis gameplay? And
Yeah,
my only thing is I don't think they'll do that because gyro, it's not as it's not as precise as like touching a touchscreen would be, and I don't think it's as intuitive as that. So I kind of feel like for the Switch's sake, I think they're going to go back to the first Mario versus Donkey Kong gameplay. At least that's what I hope. But if they go with the minis gameplay, I really wouldn't be surprised. But
well, they could
yeah, I don't
adapt
know,
the
man.
button controls, but what would your reaction be if it's Mario vs. Donkey Kong, tipping stars again and again and again mayhem, where it's another game in that style, just on a new system?
I mean, I'd be pretty indifferent to it. To be honest with you, I'm already having a good year with Mario Wonder, so it doesn't really matter to me. But part of me is kind of like, who are these games, kind of targeting towards? Because I know there's fans for it, but it's not as big as like it used to be in the DS era. And I think part of that is that the games for the franchise kind of needs a shakeup. It doesn't even feel like the Mario vs. Donkey Kong title doesn't make sense anymore. I actually like the title Mini Mario and Friends for the Wii U because that's what the games are nowadays. It's basically Mini Mario doing these little things. It has nothing to do with Mario, really. It has nothing to do with Donkey Kong. It just has to do with these toys.
Yeah, and considering how much Nintendo seems to love them, they really should start making more merchandise for them. If they actually had an amiibo
That would
line
be
of them,
cool.
that'd be really cool. But the thing is, I feel like those sort of games definitely had more of a place in the DS era for sure, and a little bit in the 3DS and Wii U era. I know I ripped on tipping stars enough because I find that to be the most repetitive. I was gonna say repugnant, but there's nothing disgusting about it. No, it's the most repetitive, stagnant Mario game, even more than New Super Mario Bros. 2. But the thing is, it's just like, at that time it made sense since Nintendo really embraced digital games. You had stuff like Push Mode, Crash Mode, Stretch Mode, Dylan's Rolling Western, Rusty's Real Deal Baseball, Dr. Luigi, NES Remix 1 and 2. There are probably a lot more. But you don't really get that nowadays. Nintendo doesn't really do that much anymore. The last example I could think of is Kirby's Dream Buffet, which was a really cool multiplayer-centric game that was only $15 on the eShop, and a great way to celebrate Kirby's anniversary, but I will say, if the new Mario vs. Donkey Kong game is yet another game in the mini style, I'm gonna be a little bit disappointed because I've always wanted a successor to the first game. I don't know if I'd be completely furious, though. I feel like I'd be a little more indifferent like you are. Again, like you said, it really has nothing to do with Mario or Donkey Kong. Nothing to do with the game! But, like I said, I will be over the moon excited if it's actually a successor to the first game. You know what I will be furious about, though? F-Zero 99. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, now that is tone deaf. That is tone deaf. If that's okay, the only reason I say that is, how long has it been since the last F-Zero game? Almost 20 years?
I believe the last one that we got was F-Zero GP Legend. That was either 2003 or 2004. Yeah, essentially 2 decades.
Yeah.
So twice the length since the last Donkey Kong game. But
so you're gonna tell. It reminds me, probably not to the same extent, but it reminds me of when they had the F-Zero tracks announced for Mario Kart 8, and then they didn't do anything with that momentum that was built up for that. This is like a worse version of that. First of all, the 99 games always go out of service after a couple of years. Second of all, why not just remaster F-Zero GX? Wouldn't that make more sense?
That for a while, and it does make absolute sense. They've been doing remakes and remasters of games, and they've been great, and they've been selling well. Series like Metroid and Pikmin are finally taking off, and they very well could do the same for F-Zero. You see, there are so many things that I'd have wrong with F-Zero 99. First of all, let's talk about the main problem I have with it, which you mentioned. I cannot stand those damn 99 games. You know why? Why bother playing them? Why bother investing time getting good at them when they're just gonna get taken away within a few months to a year? Anyone remember Super Mario Bros. 35? That game lasted 6 months until Nintendo just took it down because, oh, it's a celebration. Wow, what a celebration, taking down a game, not allowing anyone to ever play it. This is pretty much essentially if my middle school teacher, Miss Z, operated Nintendo. She liked to take away anything fun from us. I remember my friend Chris and I made Perler Beat artwork of Mario characters. Like, it looked like the sprites, and she said, don't bring those to school, even though it was at dismissal. Wow. Talk about the fun police. And you know what? She makes Billy look like a saint in comparison. All tell. But I hate those 99 games for that reason. If they stayed up, then yeah, maybe that'd be kind of cool, but I know it's gonna have the same fate that Pac-Man 99 had, Mario 35 had. Why even bother?
You know what I was thinking about this. We've had those F-Zero GX remastered rumors for a while, right? And now PRO's confirming it's F-Zero 99. Do you think it's possible that F-Zero 99 is a version of F-Zero GX just with 99 players?
No, they'd probably go for the Super Nintendo route, because all those 99 games are sprite-based. I think that it could be possible where they have a remake of F-Zero GX alongside F-Zero 99, but just talking about F-Zero 99 on its own, and if that's the F-Zero announcement after almost 2 decades, that is going to be incredibly disappointing. With a new Mario vs. Donkey Kong game, that has the possibility of being very exciting. But F-Zero 99, it doesn't, mostly because of the fact that Nintendo takes down the 99 games, and the other reason being, that's the F-Zero game after so long. I will say, if they pull that off, and regardless of how I feel about the Mario vs. Donkey Kong game, the fact that they have a new Mario vs. Donkey Kong after a decade without DK, and F-Zero 99 after 2 decades without a new F-Zero, that reminds me of the Wii U era when they announced Metroid Prime Federation Force and Paper Mario Color Splash. At least with Federation Force, that game is totally fine in its own right. Just released and was announced at the worst possible time, but Color Splash is not a good game. It's quite bad.
Yeah, it's interesting because, he's not being very direct about whether or not the gameplay will be, like in terms of Mario versus Donkey Kong, will be centered on the minis or will be centered on Mario.
From what I can gather,
fear for the worst.
with
Yeah.
Pioro, apparently how he's getting information is he has a relative who manages Nintendo's YouTube, so he sees the thumbnails and makes conclusions from those. I don't think he actually sees what's in the trailers, but regardless of what the bird said, we already got a bird on this channel who I'm trying to get rid of. It doesn't...
Well, he hasn't been here all year.
Well, maybe with that crappy-looking Detective Pikachu game, he could return. Imagine that. Petey reviews Detective Pikachu.
He'll come back for it. It's... it's funny because I feel like in any other circumstance, I think we'd be like a little angrier about this. But I don't know, it's been a good year for Nintendo so far, and if a new Mario vs. Donkey Kong gets announced and it's the minis again, I'm going to be honest, I think I'm just going to laugh.
I think it's going to be kind of funny too. But who knows, maybe they could do something incredibly creative and cool with it. I'm not willing to write that one off, but F-Zero 99, yeah, I'm willing to write that one off as soon as Nintendo takes it down, which will be instantly. They're going to release it and then Thanos snap it out of existence. But
unfortunately, Tanabe's behind Mario vs. Donkey Kong as far as we know, so...
I will say,
I don't know.
On that note, Nintendo has changed a lot in the Switch era for the better. Yeah, I ripped on Nintendo a lot last year, rightfully so, but one thing that they've been consistently good at is listening to fan feedback. Something like Super Mario Bros. Wonder is pretty much a direct response to people wanting a new 2D Mario game that's creative, innovative, and an evolution. That's exactly what it is. Same goes for Odyssey being a sandbox 3D Mario, and Luigi's Mansion 3 returning to the more exploration-based gameplay style, rather than the missions from Dark Moon. Really, the only Mario series that has had trouble with that, or Nintendo series that I can think of, well, there are two. Pokemon, because they rush out the games and they just don't care. But with Paper Mario, regardless of how much fans wanted the gameplay style of the first two games to return, Tanabe had that one idea: we gotta make it like Sticker Star and Color Splash. Yeah, I will say, it is a step up because the game is actually fun, but we're going from something that was a masterpiece like Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door to something that's great, but not as good. It could have been great, or just phenomenal, if they made it more creative, but I've talked about Origami King enough, and I feel like if I talk about it enough, I'm gonna summon Reese. So...
I feel like because of that, because Tanabe's behind this series, and because Paper Mario has been stagnant as a series lately, I have no faith that this will be a return to form for the series. I hope so. And actually, I would be really excited for it too, but I feel like it's going to be a budget title. I feel like maybe it'll come out the day it's announced on the Direct, and it'll be like an eShop title. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but I think I'm done with the minis gameplay, and if the minis gameplay gets announced, then whatever. But I won't be getting it.
I might check it out. I'm not sure yet. We'll just have to wait and see. But I think this about wraps it up. But before ending it, any conclusions or thoughts you have about F-Zero 99? And additional thoughts on Mario vs. Donkey Kong Minis March again.
I mean, I have no thoughts about F-Zero 99. It says what it is up front. Unlike the Mario vs. Donkey Kong rumor, like we kind of know what we're getting with that. Mario vs. Donkey Kong, I think, is the more interesting one because it's been a while. When did Mini Mario and Friends come out again?
2016.
2016. So it's been, I would say, 7 years since the last Mario vs. Donkey Kong. Perhaps.
That's a pretty long gap.
It is a big gap, but perhaps this is, something they've been thinking about for a while, and maybe they want to revamp the series. One thing to note, too, is that Pauline has changed significantly since then, and her whole character's been revamped since Super Mario Odyssey. So, Do you think they're going to reflect that change in the gameplay for the new Mario versus Donkey Kong 2? Do you think Pauline is going to be a major, star in the franchise again?
I mean, to be fair, in a lot of the games, she is a major star and even has her own versions of the mini characters. But yeah, I
Oh,
think
she
she's
does.
definitely going to return. I hope
She
in a
does.
larger
I just
capacity.
meant like, yeah, I just meant like her character changed, like the way she's portrayed as
It really just
is more.
depends on what kind of a game this is. If it's more experimental or if it goes back to the series roots, I would say yes. But if it's another minis game, I would say probably not. But other than that,
Yeah,
with this Nintendo Direct, we'll have to wait and see what happens. I'd like to hear more information on that Princess Peach game, as well as seeing more footage of the Luigi's Mansion remake. Also, just more footage of games we already saw. Maybe some Mario Kart Wave 6. But,
WarioWare.
yeah, that would be excellent! But anyways, guys, that about wraps things up. I'm Demeech, joined by some guy who clearly doesn't like the Rabbids. And
And
keep
keep
calm
calm and
and
la
dada
la on.
on.
La la woo!